Hi there, and welcome to Enterprise AI Innovators, a show where top technology executives share how AI is transforming the enterprise. In each episode, guests uncover the real-world applications of AI, from improving products and optimizing operations to redefining the customer experience. I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal AI.
And I'm Sam Motamedi, a general partner at Greylock Partners.
Today on the show, we're bringing you a conversation with Sally Miller, Global Chief Information Officer at DHL Supply Chain. DHL is a global logistics powerhouse operating more than 2,500 sites worldwide. With billions in revenue and over 68,000 employees, their scale is staggering. The company's literally moving the world's goods every single day. There are three interesting things that stood out to me in our conversation. First, DHL has deployed over 8,000 robots across its facilities, working side by side with people to reduce strain, increase throughput, and even improve job satisfaction. A great example of machines and humans working together. Second, we talked about computer vision solutions like trailer unloading bots and driver monitoring systems that are making warehouses safer, while multilingual robot interfaces are creating more inclusive workplaces. Finally, Sally shared powerful examples of AI at work behind the scenes, from machine learning models that predict demand and orchestrate daily operations, to generative AI agents that confirm delivery appointments in hours instead of days. The result? Faster, safer, and more efficient operations at a massive scale. Sally, first of all, thank you so much for joining the show today. We were looking forward to having you. Do you mind giving kind of our audience a little background about yourself and kind of the role you have today and maybe how you got there?
My name is Sally Miller, and I'm the global CIO for DHL Supply Chain. DHL is made up of five divisions. The division I'm in, we provide third-party warehousing and transportation services to customers. But a lot of us might know us from our Express division, which is time-definite parcel delivery, as well as our forwarding division, where we move freight between continents. And we have a division called P&P, where in Germany the post office is privatized, and we basically run the German post office. And then the last division is a division called DHL e-commerce, which inserts packages less than £5 going to consumers into the postal service here in the US and other countries into their network to provide a reduced cost to typically e-commerce shippers. So I've been in IT my whole career, which is over 30 years. I started out as a COBOL programmer, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners don't even know what that is.
Some do. I've got a couple of them.
Good. It's, I think was a good base for IT to learn application development. And I got into supply chain IT fairly early in my career after doing 5 years in banking, and have just progressed from programmer to leading projects to managing teams, developers, as well as implementers. I've been with DHL now for 20 years, and I really have seen the role of the CIO change during my tenure as a regional CIO and a global CIO. It's less about uptime and key KPIs, and now it's all about innovation, whether that be robotics, data analytics, AI. It's how can we innovate, make our operators more efficient, and provide the tools that white collar workers and even blue collar workers expect. We do see that associates are much happier working in an environment where technology is deployed. So supply chain is historically known as being very manual, a bit dated, while things have changed significantly probably in the last 10 years.
DHL is an interesting company where I think it's the brand is pretty well known worldwide. I'm sure there's
It
very few people
is.
that haven't heard of it. But I suspect that like very few people truly appreciate the scale of operations and maybe the impact that you guys have for the world. So yeah, is there some way to help contextualize that? Like, how would you maybe share with the average person, like to help them really appreciate the full scale and impact of DHL supply chain?
I think that a lot of people in the US are very familiar with UPS and FedEx, and DHL does not do domestic parcel delivery in the US. But if you go outside the US, Canada, Europe, Asia, Latin America, the brand is even more well known than it is in the US. For supply chain, the division I'm in, we operate 2,500 sites globally, and we're the industry leader, and we're larger by double our next competitor. So, bigger isn't always better, but it is important, in today's world, a global economy, to be able to provide services for customers in all geographies. So that is a big differentiator for us. And I think that overall, we're about the, top 10 in terms of the largest employers in the world, private employers, not including governments, but it's a very large organization, but very, great opportunities. You can, change roles without changing companies. And if supply chain is where your heart is and interests, it's been great for me personally, and I've enjoyed helping others achieve their career ambitions as well.
When you think about the kind of the last 10 or 20 years, what are some of the more exciting kind of or impactful changes you've seen from a technology perspective, right, across the last couple technology platform shifts?
There are a lot of technologies that are hyped, but I think that even the ones that are overhyped, there is something you can get out of them and deploy in your business. But one of the challenges that we have and a lot of companies have is you really need to have good quality data to leverage some of these technologies quickly and at scale. Otherwise, you have to, take it in bite-sized chunks, which isn't tragic. It just takes longer to realize the benefits. But probably the biggest advancements fall into a couple categories. The first would be robotics. And we have over 8,000 robots deployed across our 2,500 facilities. And these truly are solutions that work alongside people to make their jobs less manual, less strenuous, and more enjoyable. It reduces training time. They're more productive. We get more throughput. We're less dependent on filling some positions that, have remained open even post COVID. But things like unloading cartons out of a hot trailer in the summer, if you've got a bot that can do that, bots that, help people pick orders by moving the items from one zone to another so that there's less travel time for our associates who are picking orders, and then delivering the completed orders to the packing area. So these advancements have really made working in these environments just a lot more pleasant. Another key technology is, different forms of AI. AI has been around for over 20 years, but machine learning, there are a lot of use cases where we can take data from different applications as well as from external sources and learn and predict what will happen so that we can make decisions and influence outcomes better than we've been able to in the past. And when you have a company like ourselves, where you have 2,500 sites across the world, you're not physically there. And just to get the data feeds, it's helpful to combine that and have the algorithms learn. It just saves time and provides insights and makes us more efficient. So machine learning, and then we had, you know, AI come out, ChatGPT made a big splash, and it was how can we leverage that in some of our back office functions? And our ability to find use cases where we have good data and have the model learn from the data and produce what is being done manually is a big run for large organizations like ourselves, where you have people, responding to RFPs or responding to associate claims. There are a bunch of different use cases where we have years of data and years of responses that we can use AI to do that type of work alongside a human in the loop in terms of reviewing the output, but just saving a lot of the manual, redundant, boring work makes the roles we're able to offer a lot more interesting. And then obviously lately agentic AI has gained a lot of hype, but I really am excited about some of the use cases that we have that really takes manual labor and really lower cost labor markets where we're using call center support in Costa Rica or India. We can have an agent do that work, and the agent is able to complete the work much faster than humans. So where we would be calling, over the course of a week to confirm delivery appointments, we now kick off agents, and those, appointments are confirmed within a couple of hours. So we've saved that manual, some people call it soul sucking work. We've automated it, and we have the data faster. So the downstream processes are more efficient and we have more opportunities. So those are the areas that are hyped. Now, there are some things that are way overhyped, one of which I would say are humanoid robots. You'll see a lot of videos of robots that look like humans folding laundry or, running down the street or dancing. But the use case in supply chain for those so far is pretty limited. They have limited battery life and the cost. There's really not a return, but they do get a lot of visibility, hype, and investment. So I do spend a lot of time talking with venture capital companies on where they're investing and trying to persuade them, to fund companies that are developing products that are fit for their intended use, look like what they're intended to be used for, not necessarily a scary looking Star Wars type figure. No one wants to work next to that. It's scary looking.
You guys, I'm sure, have been doing machine learning. Your whole industry has been like one of the leaders, right? Actually, machine learning from way back, even like 30, 40 years ago, right? So there's a lot of students in school studying computer science, and they probably don't even realize that some of those problems, the key computer science problems, come from logistics and the supply chain. But I'd love to ask you, like, where do you think we are in that hype cycle with AI?
I think we're early in the hype cycle, but I don't think you can compare the hype cycle of AI to other technologies in the past, because I do think the potential impact, I view AI is to the white collar workforce what robotics was to the blue collar workforce. It is going to change the way people work, much like the introduction of the personal computer. I mean, if you look back at films from the 60s, you saw those large typing rooms with people sitting in there typing all day, and then you went to the early 80s and people were on laptops. I think that AI is going to have that large of an impact on how people work in the white collar environment. So I think the hype is justified. And I think that the cost to deliver AI solutions and the need for good quality data and the ability of solutions to reason and act independently will improve over time. And I think all companies need to be looking at use cases where people are spending a fair portion of their day doing non-value added tasks, and how can we use AI to do those tasks for them.
Appreciate your perspective, Sally. So my background is not in the physical world technology. I work in cybersecurity. And I have to imagine if I went to a DHL facility, I would probably be blown away by, I think, just the level of, or sorry, the technology deployed. I have to imagine most of our listeners, even outside technology, would kind of be blown away. Do you mind sharing maybe a couple ways you guys are using kind of AI or other kind of transformative innovation that maybe just like the average person wouldn't fully appreciate, right? Even though they might be picking up a DHL package once a week.
Well, I think that when you enter a DHL facility, you can't necessarily see all the technology deployed because a lot of it is looking at, what the order pool is for the day, what the available labor is, and matching the most efficient way to pick, pack, and ship those orders to meet the service level and the available resources, whether that be people, automation, robots, whatever form. So there is a lot of orchestration in the background that wouldn't necessarily be visible right away, but that in itself is fairly new to the industry because that would be done manually previously. Someone would, kick off, we call them tasks for people to complete, and now we can automate that with intelligence to optimize that instead of it being tribal knowledge. You do this at 10 o'clock, you do this at 12 o'clock. So a fair bit isn't very visible to the eye. Obviously, robots are. So seeing robots, and we allow the associates to name the robots to make it more personal. So, little things like that are things we've learned over time to help with change management and make it a fun place to work. But I think that managing 2,500 facilities, our number one priority is safety, ensuring that people leave the same way that they arrived to work. So safety, physical safety of the environment and people is priority number one. And you mentioned cybersecurity. You've heard in the past year of several, threat actors targeting customers' supply chain as well as supply chain companies. So the amount of investment we've had in defending and shoring up the environment, as well as the, auditing the environment of some of our key software suppliers to make sure that they don't have any exposed vulnerabilities so that we can ensure a smooth level of service, not only of applications we host, but ones that we utilize every day that are mission critical. So do keep in mind that, our express division is moving parcels and letters, and mainly is a network of businesses that have sortation centers and very tightly timed to the inbound and outbound schedule, and they are architected for peak volumes, for meeting, the predicted volume service levels, and just the infrastructure and level of automation of those facilities is very impressive. On the supply chain side, we typically are providing warehousing and transport value-added services for companies who don't want to execute that portion of the supply chain and leave it up to the experts that this is all we do, and this is all we do. So mastering the deployment and use of supply chain IT applications, warehouse management systems, transport, labor management, there are a bunch of them, and knowing which robotic solutions to deploy based on profile, having that integration, being able to maximize the efficiency of not only that robotic solution, but of the humans interacting with it is a lot of what is happening behind the scenes that you wouldn't see when you physically walk in. But it is all about optimization, people, automation, robotics, and the software that houses the work that we need to get done that day. So I manage a team of over 3,000 people globally, and it takes a lot to keep up with a fast growing company like we are. We have ambitions to double by 2030. So that is our mission, and we've got plans. Part of it is growing our current customer base, signing new customers, but also we've done some acquisitions and we are moving fast.
So if you kind of reflect on the last maybe couple years, are there any kind of innovations using kind of AI or robotics? And those are becoming increasingly like the same thing. Are innovations you feel particularly proud of where you maybe a former version of yourself, right? Sally from 10 years ago would have said, hey, that problem, that's just the nature of our business. There's, we just have to kind of deal with that. And now in hindsight, you're like, wow, like with the kind of innovation, these new technologies, we're able to really kind of reimagine what's possible, right? Anything that kind of led to a big win that feels, memorable and innovative.
I would say some of the solutions that we've deployed that leverage computer vision have really made me sit there and say, wow. I mentioned unloading trailers. We've got a bot deployed from Boston Dynamics that is looking at the size of the cartons and determining which one to pick next. And if one falls off, it's smart enough to pick it up. And just that is very impressive. We've had another use where we monitor driver behavior in our trucks. So seeing if a driver is, nodding off to sleep, or if they're on their cell phone, or if they don't have a seatbelt on, just improving the safety of our drivers is very important, and it's helping them. And we will see films where they were looking the other way, and we will alert them and they'll give us a thumbs up like a thank you. They were distracted and they're back on track. So that type of interaction of technology that we've deployed is rewarding. And probably the third is the bots in the warehouse that are able to display in any language that's selected by the associate, and just seeing how happy they are. If you're an immigrant from Somalia and you're in a warehouse in Columbus, Ohio, to see your native language makes you feel at home. So I do like to see the bots named after something that's familiar to them and the native language. It makes people feel part of the team, and a much more inclusive environment, which I enjoy being a part of. There are a lot of things, if I look back 10 years ago, of what I'm doing today. And probably one of the most rewarding is that we are more, you know, uh, a respected and valued member of the board and not just a cost or a necessary evil. but we are leading the business and how we operate and how effectively we do that is, how successful we are in our roles as CIOs.
Way back in the early days of the internet, I remember buying computer parts online because that was my hobby as a kid. And I would like send a check through the internet, and then maybe if you're lucky, something would show up right in the
Right.
future. Today, I feel so spoiled, right? If I don't get a text alert where the truck is 4 stops away and I know exactly when they press my doorbell, like I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? And so obviously customer expectations have changed over time. What's your view of kind of how kind of customers expectations have transformed, and how does that influence your kind of strategy?
Well, customer expectation on speed of delivery of product continues to accelerate. Now the one of the latest trends is 30-minute grocery delivery. So if you place an order, it'll be at your door within 30 minutes. And to do that from a supply chain network side it just means more locations with an optimized number of SKUs. So it's big opportunity for people in supply chain like ourselves because you're going to have more frequent, smaller shipments from locations strategically placed near where the products will be delivered. So that has been the trend for probably since COVID, but I see that to satisfy the needs of the end consumer continuing to escalate.
Is there kind of like a bold technology bet you guys made that you felt like really paid off, right? Anything where you're like, okay, this one's a bit of a gambit, right? It's a little risky, but if we pull it off, right, it could be transformational, right? Any kind of, success stories you can share there?
I think that we were very early to recognize a couple of the leading agentic AI vendors that we've had some very successful use cases that will have a positive impact on our business in terms of reducing our cost base because we've got a tool utilizing AI to automate that. So I think that supply chain companies, service providers aren't typically known for being on the bleeding edge of technology, but we jumped on that pretty quickly and are already seeing a nice impact, positive impact on the business. A couple of the use cases around customer service. So, checking on a customer for payment terms or scheduling an appointment or checking on the status of an order are things that we do every day throughout DHL. And to have a tool to do that that's quick to implement in days and not weeks, it is definitely a game changer.
Sally, how do you think about kind of developing the workforce in the age of AI, right? There's roles are going to be changing, right? There's new skills we probably have to build kind of collectively as an industry and a community. Yeah. How do you think kind of like what role does AI play in that? And, how do you kind of keep your team up to date with all the latest technologies and make sure they're being as effective as possible?
Well, I think the nature of IT, and I look over my past 30 years and how the platforms, applications, infrastructure have changed and become more complex over time. It creates more areas of specialization, but I think that IT people are very good at adapting and conforming to what interests them and also what they see of value. I think that in terms of the overall workforce, our business partners, it's hard for them to understand the latest and to work with them on defining use cases and taking them through an implementation, I think is the best way for them to understand the potential and light the fire in them to think of more ways to utilize the technology, because obviously they're closer to the day-to-day operations than we are in IT, but sometimes they have to see it to understand it.
That makes sense. Um, one thing in my own experience I found is that it's sometimes hard to know how to inspire people, inspire the team. But what I've always found like helpful for me personally is talking about why am I inspired. And I found when I hear other people talking about their inspirations, even if they don't resonate for me, it still kind of elicits the same feelings. So I have to ask, like, you're in a you got a tough job, right? You got a big team, a complex operation. I'm sure you miss out on a lot of hours of sleep you probably rather get. But like, you keep doing, you've been doing it for a long time. Like what inspires you? What motivates you? What kind of like keeps you, in the game, trying to, help your customers and help your team?
I really like the challenge. Challenge and no 2 days are the same. And I like the people and the work. So I talk to people all across the globe all day long. I enjoy, collaborating, understanding their perspectives, and helping them be successful. And at the end of the day, it's all about how happy our customer is and how we're providing a service for them. But I really enjoy the challenge of making the customer happy, and how do we as a company leverage our resources and available technology to do that. But I love a challenge. I love I'm very competitive by nature, and this is a fun time to be in IT and supply chain. And I love to watch the impact of a deployment on our sites.
Appreciate you sharing. So, at the end of the episodes, we'd like to do a bit of a lightning round to try to get some like kind of
Sure.
shorter kind of takes. And so basically, I would ask you like 4 or 5 questions that are really hard to answer, briefly, but looking for kind of like the one tweet response. So please, please forgive me if these are, are a little challenging. So, maybe to start, how do you think companies should measure the success of a CIO in kind of the era of AI today?
I think, especially for AI, the ability to grow top line revenue and not have overhead costs grow at the same rate.
What is a one piece of advice that you wish someone told you when you first became a global CIO?
That things will take longer at the global level than they do regional. One would think that would be obvious, but when you're going through it, it's patience isn't necessarily my strong suit. It does take significantly longer to impact change at a global level rather than regional.
Maybe switching more to the personal side, is the book you've read in the past that's had a big impact on you, and love to hear why.
I read for escape. So I read spy novels. I like a lot of the series, and there's a series called The Gray Man. Those are very good. There was one, the Mitch Rapp series are good as well, and there are several others.
What is an upcoming technology or product that you're just most personally excited about?
I love the whole Waymo car, autonomous driving. I think that is a technology I'm fascinated about, and it really eliminates the fights between my husband and I about how one is driving. So that is a technology I am watching closely.
Well, Sally, really appreciate you taking time to join us today. Thank you so much. Looking forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you, Evan. I enjoyed it.
That was Sally Miller, Global Chief Information Officer at DHL Supply Chain.
Thanks for listening to Enterprise AI Innovators. I'm Sam Motamedi, a general partner at Greylock Partners.
And I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal AI. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Learn more about enterprise AI transformation at enterprisesoftware.blog.
This show is produced by Josh Meir. See you next time.